It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of June 28th, 1996. We've only got two movies to look at here, so let's just go ahead and jump right on into it. And we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Eddie Murphy in the remake of The Nutty Professor. This is, of course, the remake to the Jerry Lewis comedy classic from the 1960s, and this was coming at a time when Eddie Murphy's star power was definitely in question. He had been through this period for at least 6 or 7 years where his name is where he'd be starring in movies, but they weren't the big hits that made defined him in the 80s. Like there wasn't a big Coming to America style hit. There was no Beverly Hills Cop style hit. There was no Trading Places style hit. There was no 48 Hour style hit. You got stuff like Harlem Nights, Another 48 Hours, The Distinguished Gentleman, Beverly Hills Cop 3, Vampire in Brooklyn. Not to say that most of those movies were bad or anything. Most of them were just okay, but I think the real worst one of that bunch was Beverly Hills Cop 3. I still say it's one of the worst movies of all time, but most of those movies that were in that list are not bad movies. They just weren't up to the same par that Eddie Murphy's best movies were at in the 80s compared to what they were at this point. But this was the film that basically had to show... Eddie Murphy in this movie basically had to show everybody that, hey, I can still be funny and I can still be really damn good. And he's both that in this movie. This is a really damn good movie. It's a really good remake of the original film that doesn't just do the same story as the previous film. It modernizes it, puts this unique twist on the story that actually works to the film's advantage, and just paves the way for this impressive makeup work that's done on here. The makeup work is what everybody usually talks about with this film, and when you get a guy like Rick Baker to do this, I mean, you're already on the right path with that front. But it's not only is the makeup really good here, but the visual effects in this movie surprisingly still hold up after all these years. I was looking at this, and this is a movie that's been over 30 years, almost 30 years after it came out. The visual effects of this movie still kind of hold up on a number of levels. Not all the time, but it's still entertaining to watch on a number of amazing levels here. And this is also directed by Tom Shadyac, who 2 years ago had put a name for himself with Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. And this kind of established him as the premier comedy director of the late 90s, because he would later go on to direct Liar Liar. He would also direct Bruce Almighty later on in his career. I mean, this was a film that really sparked two major renaissances in the late 90s, one being Eddie Murphy's renaissance and the arrival of Tom Shadyac as this top comedy director. And it's just a really good film, and Eddie Murphy really, you could tell, is putting his heart and soul into this movie because he really believes in this, and he knows that he can make this story work as well as he can here. Because not only is he great playing the Professor, Sherman Klump, and Buddy Love, but he plays the entire Klump family, and the way that they present this is still, like I said, it's still really impressive to look at, the way that everybody is in the same room, and it's the same actor playing all these characters in that dining room scene. And just over 30 years later, it still looks really impressive that they were able to pull that off, and it still looks really impressive to this day. Like, the movie is just a ton of fun to watch. After all these years, it's still a film that's still really funny. It's still incredibly clever. It's still really enjoyable. It's still a ton of fun. Like the big scene at the end where, it's Buddy and Sherman going after each other, and while it's inside the same body, and you see all the visual effects working there. That's still a really fun scene to watch, even after all these years. It's still impressive to watch. The visuals that they were able to use for that, like, it's an amazing scene that still holds up after all these years. And like, I really love this movie, man. It's a ton of fun. It's a movie that I always go back to every couple of years. I pop it on. It's just like, it's still funny after all these years, and it's amazing what they were able to do to take this story which works on its own as in the Jerry Lewis film. The Jerry Lewis film is still very funny, but man, this movie, I think, did it a whole lot better. This is one of the few remakes that I would say is better than the original film. I think they did a very good job of modernizing the story for a new generation, and it just works so well to so many levels. It's a great film. I really enjoy it so much. I love it. It's a really good film. One of Eddie Murphy's best films, no question about it. The Nutty Professor. Need I say more, man? It's just a fantastic, fantastic film. With that said, let us go ahead and move on to the last movie that we have here, and that is a comedy that's not quite as well received as The Nutty Professor, but some people call it one of the most notorious bombs to come out in '96, but was it really? Let's see for ourselves. This is Demi Moore in Striptease. So let's just jump into some of the things that are notable about this movie before we actually jump into my thoughts on it, because there are some notable things about this movie. This was a film that was a highly publicized film, of course, with Demi Moore in it. She got paid a then unprecedented almost almost $13 million to star in this movie, making her the highest paid actress up to that point. There was a lot of expectations for this film. This was a film that was originally, it's based off of a book, but by Carl Hiaasen, Hiaasen. I don't know if I'm mispronouncing that or not, but that's the name of the writer that wrote this. And this book is supposedly is very, very different from the actual movie here. There was a lot of controversies behind it at the time of its release. There was a lot of behind the scenes stuff of Demi Moore actually going to an actual pole dancing school, I guess, or a place where they teach pole dancing, and she had to learn how to do these dances in this movie. And for the longest time, I always considered it one of her worst movies that she's ever done. I myself have admitted that this is not a good movie by any means. I think when I did my list of the top 5 best and worst Demi Moore movies, I think I had this at number 2. But uh, the more I've looked at it after all these years later, I'll say this: it's not a very good movie. It's a very disappointing film on a number of levels, because you could see the pieces where this could actually work. I mean, you've got Demi Moore. Demi Moore is a very good actress. We've seen her in so many good movies. This is the film that was notably seen as the film that marked her downturn in her career. And in this movie here, her character really isn't all that interesting or that engaging. That's one of the things. Yeah, it's cool to see. Yeah, it's nice seeing a hot Demi Moore stripping and getting nude in this. It's a cool. I mean, if you're a guy, it's a really good idea, and to sell it like this. And yeah, it's nice to see her get nude, but you know what? You have the internet. You can watch this stuff. You can go to websites to just watch these clips from that movie here. But you also have to sit through this boring melodrama, this side plot, which should be very intriguing. You've got Robert Patrick playing her ex-husband, and the whole story is that Demi Moore's character is basically doing this because she's about to lose custody of her daughter, and I mean, it's just not engaging whatsoever. The problem is, I think this director, Andrew Bergman, I think is much better than this. I think there was so much on here that he could have made this a whole lot better. This is the guy that did The Freshman. This is the guy that did It Could Happen to You, Honeymoon in Vegas. Very funny comedies, but here he has to balance a black comedy with this very serious subplot here, and it's reminiscent of something like Over the Top. Like, we have to have a custody battle storyline in that film, but is with Sylvester Stallone having to win an arm wrestling contest in order to gain custody of at least of his son. It's just like, what sense does that make? It's the same thing in this movie here. Like it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. And Robert Patrick himself is not even that great in this movie, honestly, and that's a shame too, because Robert Patrick can be so good in movies like this, but he just plays it way too over the top. It's clear that he's not even trying to play this straightforward. It's just like, it doesn't really work to his advantages as an actor. I will say there are things about the movie that I do think are indeed funny. I like Ving Rhames playing the security guard for the strip club that Demi Moore works in, and I surprisingly found Burt Reynolds kind of funny in this movie. I like seeing them playing this different type of role, and it's weird seeing him with that blonde hair, but it actually does kind of work here. And yeah, the dancing sequences are nicely done. There are even times when there are some bits of good comedy here and there, but you just have to sit through this melodramatic storyline that just doesn't really have a whole lot there to work to the film's advantages. I mean, it's a film that has so much potential to be really good, considering the talent that's on board here, but in the end, the story just wasn't that good. I think if they had another rewrite of the script, or maybe they even took some stuff from the book to make it kind of more believable, maybe you can actually have something here. But as it is, I will say, yeah, it's not a very good movie. Do I hate it as much as I did before? It's a long time ago. Not really. I mean, I've grown to kind of like it a little bit for just some of the little bits of elements that I do kind of like about it. But other than that, though, I still wouldn't say it's a great film whatsoever. I still feel like it's a film that is only really watchable because of the strip club scenes, because of the dancing scenes, and that's pretty much about it, along with some little bits of comedy here and there. But other than that, though, the film just doesn't work because it takes itself way too seriously at too many points. It throws in a subplot that doesn't really fit with the rest of the flow of the film. It's just a major I mean, it's just a major misfire on a number of levels. I won't say it's a bad movie overall. I won't say it's a great film either. It's a film that's just kind of like like I said before, I hated it before a long time ago, but in the years since then, I've actually grown to kind of appreciate it a little bit more, but never to the point where I would say you should check this movie out. I still think it's not a very good film overall. It's just an idea that should be worth a. It's just an idea that sounds good on paper, but it still needed another I think it needed another rewrite to really get the flow of what the movie was all about. I mean, to its credit, though, it's still a lot better than Showgirls. I mean, Showgirls was just a bit, but no, actually no, I take that back. Showgirls is one of those so bad it's good movies. Striptease. It's not up to that level. It's just a movie that's just kind of like. A couple years ago, I would have said it's absolutely horrible, but now I would say it's not bad, but it's not something I never want to watch again, honestly. Like I said, if I want to watch the nude scenes in here or the dancing scenes, you just go online and watch it, because that's really the only real way to watch those type of scenes in a movie like this. But overall, it's a major missed opportunity. It was seen as kind of the downturn of Demi Moore's career, but I'll say this, it wasn't the worst thing she's ever done. I've seen her in much worse films, and her career didn't really turn out that bad after all. There were still a couple of decent films that we'll eventually get to, but this is definitely not one of them. So that's my thoughts on Striptease. So with that said, that wraps up another edition of Time About the Movies. When we meet next time, we've got 4th of July weekend 1996, halfway through the year, and we've got the biggest movie of the entire year. That is Roland Emmerich's Independence Day. Some of you might be interested to hear what I have to say about that one, but we'll eventually get to that one on the next episode, as well as John Travolta in Phenomena, which was which is actually a surprise hit considering it came out the same weekend as Independence Day. But again, we'll get to that one when we get to that one. But that's going to be on the next episode. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page, check out the previous episode, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for another episode. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, take care.